Welcome everyone to today's podcast. My name is Paul. I'm a very happy member of Cocaine Anonymous. I'm really pleased to say we've been joined by Jennifer from New York. Hello, Jennifer.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing just fine. All the better for hearing a friendly voice, as they say.
Yes.
So today, I'm really blessed that Jennifer's come along to share her experience, strength, and hope with us. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We hope you enjoy the message. There is about 2.5 dozen podcasts on this channel now. Please feel free to check those out and distribute them. There are 13 on the steps. No, we don't have one on 13 step in. It's because we've got 2 on step 1. We've also got one on introduction to CA. We've got one on the spiritual malady, the entire psychic change, the ABCs of recovery, 3 on sponsorship. So please check those out. But look, it gives me great privilege and pleasure, without further ado, Jennifer, to just hand the floor over to you.
Okay. Hi, my name's Jennifer, and I am an extremely grateful recovering cocaine addict. And the reason that I say I'm extremely grateful is I have been granted a life beyond my wildest dreams. As they say in the big book, I have been rocketed to the 4th dimension. And I love that because, I felt cocaine took me to the 4th dimension. And, it's so cool to know I don't need cocaine to be in the 4th dimension. So if this goes according to what I think I'm going to say, I'm going to start with, as we did in New York, my experience, strength, and hope, what happened, what it was like, and what it's like now. And that's what I'm hoping to do right now. So, God willing, here goes. So, I was born in a very little town in Connecticut in the United States of America. Most people know of it because it's called Lyme. Lyme, and that's where Lyme disease came from. And my brother was the first person to get Lyme disease. Man, I think he was very young. But anyhow, so I lived in this little tiny town, and there were 2 liquor stores and nothing else. Oh, a church, congregational church. But, that goes to show, I was born in the 50s and the late 50s. Oh, no, okay, let's be honest, the middle 50s. 1955. So just to get that out of the way, I don't care. You're not seeing me, so it doesn't matter. But anyhow, so I was in this little town, and we went to church every Sunday. There was nothing that was abnormal in this little town. We lived in a beautiful house, everything. And then one day when I was 5, after church, everybody left me there and forgot about me. Now, in the old days, we used to have something called the 4 children, because that's how many there were, in alcoholism. I studied to be an alcoholism counselor, so that's how I know about it. But it's, the 3rd child, and that's me, the lost child. And there I was sitting on the steps of this church, lost, and no one remembered that I wasn't there. And, that came back to haunt me a lot later, that I was that unimportant, that the family didn't even know I wasn't there. And that continued. So what happened was my dad got transferred to Hong Kong. So we lived in Hong Kong after this little idyllic town. And I have to say this, I hope it's not politically incorrect. It was lily white. There was nobody, but just white people. And, so I moved to Hong Kong, which is totally different. And we got there on a cruise ship. And I got off as we were waiting to get off the cruise ship, all these little sampans were around the cruise ship. And the little boys were holding dogs saying, "Buy this dog or we're having him for dinner." Now, a lot of you have heard the jokes about that, but this was actual fact. And it blew me out of the water. Okay. So that was the first significant cultural shock that I went through. That was also a shock to my 8-year-old person. So we moved there. And as I said, my father was an international executive, and we did quite well. So in our apartment, it was huge. We had servants' quarters. We had a live-in chauffeur. We had a live-in cook and a live-in ama, she was called, but she was cleaning lady. And the chauffeur would drive my parents, and he drank a lot. And he would drive my parents to parties and come back and sexually abuse me. And the ama and the cook were too afraid to say anything. Even though they had their separate quarters, they knew when he was drunk. And the reason I'm bringing that in to this story is that, you know, sexual abuse might have happened to other people. I also was incest abuse. And the reason I bring that in is if anyone someday, I had some automatic writing, or I was inspired to write the 12 steps on sexual abuse. If anyone ever needs that, you know, I feel very confident that I have healed my past in that way. And I know that I wanted to escape because this driver told me he would kill me if I told anyone. And he would take me and my siblings to Wan Chai in Hong Kong, which is the red light district. And we would go to these strip clubs. Now, remember, I'm 8 years old. And, you know, my mother dressed us in little hats and gloves, white hats, and blue navy jackets. And there I am in the strip club with this stripper with a boa around my neck. And the whole club is laughing like crazy, you know, and I'm in total shock, you know, because this is totally out of my realm of thinking or imagining. So it was, the scariest part was being told I would be killed. That was really scary. So anyhow, just to move along from that, my mother went insane in Hong Kong, and she was in a psychiatric institution and had to have electric shock treatment. And I remember we left Hong Kong and my dad moved to Belgium and we moved to Madrid, Spain. Now, why did we do that? Because my father woke up and found my mother straddling him with a knife ready to plunge into his heart. And that was one of the issues, was she just wanted him dead. And a lawyer said, it's better to be divorced than to die. I mean, to kill someone. I don't know the saying, but anyhow, so she got a divorce. We moved to Spain. And I was now, during the summer, we were in Connecticut, and I started drinking, like really crazy drinking, out of a mayonnaise jar, the liquor cabinet, all different liquors, okay? And I did all that with a friend, and we were both 10, and her little brother, we were camping on her lawn, and her little brother was in another tent camping with his best friend. And this was the first amends I had to make, you know, in the steps. And we were drunk. So she and I wanted to figure out how to kiss. So we used them as our models. And, you know, the poor kid, I mean, he was sick. So anyhow, there we go. That was and, you know, I've made my amends and everything. So we moved to Spain. In Madrid, there's no drinking age for wine and beer. And you can drink in a bar. The bar that we used as the kids, the international kids living in Madrid, was the Jenny bar. And they never asked for any ID. And I was 11 now. And we went to all these parties that were unchaperoned. So I thought this was the norm of what kids did around the world. But it was very different. And my mother had a very jet-setting life. And in the summers, we spent in Marbella. And one day I answered the door, and you guys probably don't remember who this is, but Brian Jones was there. And he was a member of the Rolling Stones, and he got murdered in a pool there. So anyhow, and Christina Jorgensen, which you guys probably don't know, and I'm name dropping, but you don't know who it is. So I don't know if it really counts, but Christina Jorgensen was the first transsexual, I think it is. She became a woman, and she was gorgeous, and she was a model, and she was a very dear friend of my mother's. And I got so drunk at an art opening in our building one night that I came back to the apartment, and I said to my sister, when I laid down, I said, the whole room is spinning. She said, oh, just put one foot on the floor, when you're laying down, put one leg on the floor and it'll stop. So I got educated very young on how to do that. And when we moved, I also learned to smoke cigarettes, but my mother smoked non-filtered Pall Malls. And I had to be in the bathroom learning to inhale, and all that tobacco was getting in my mouth and it was disgusting. But I learned so that I was a cool kid now. Okay. And we moved back to Connecticut and I was blown away. It's not like that back there. It just wasn't the same. I was back in this lily white town, and on the way back to Connecticut, we had stopped on Carnaby Street in London. And so I had a mini skirt, all the mod clothes, the boots and the hat and all that stuff. And it was totally different. I had skipped a grade in Spain because I was better educated in the British school system in Hong Kong than the American school system. So I was now in 8th grade, which is the grade my sister used to be in. And none of the girls wanted to be my friend because, I was younger than them. But the boys loved me. They loved it that I dressed in all these mod clothes and had wild ideas and everything. And my mother was still a very active drinker at the time. And I would invite people over to my house, kids over to my house, and she would be dancing on the table, the flamingo, and the dining room table, and it was embarrassing. But anyhow, let me move on. So then in Connecticut, my sister was getting into drugs. So she told me I could go downstairs and get tinfoil and a paper towel roll, and we were going to smoke hash. So for the first 3 times we smoked hash, I thought I was smoking corned beef hash because I was so clueless. Well, anyhow, I left this little town, and my dad was in Brazil and my mother shipped me there. So I went to the graded, graded anyhow, that's what it was called. And I went Escuela Graduada de Sao Paulo, that's what it's called. And I didn't have my sister's influence. She wasn't there. So I became a goody two-shoes, which is my real inside. I am really a goody two-shoes. I was great at smuggling cocaine because I looked so innocent. And that to me was amazing, that I could get away with so much. So I'm in Brazil. I don't have any negative influence. And there I am living the life that I would have loved, on the pep squad, in the plays, after school activities, no drinking, no drugs, nothing. It was just the way, I think I was 13 at the time, the way a normal 13 would live, and that 13-year-old. And that was cool. It was nice to do that. Well, all of a sudden, my dad's moving to Akron, Ohio with my stepmom, and my little brother was with me, and we were shipped to my mother. My mother happened to be in the Virgin Islands in St. Thomas, and we got off the plane there, and Dad hadn't told her that we were going to live with her permanently. And man, was she mad when she said, how long are you visiting? Because it was Christmas. And we said, oh, we're living with you now. When do we go back to Connecticut? She said, oh, I live here now. I'm not going back to Connecticut. I don't have any of you kids. The older 2 were in boarding school, and the younger 2 were with my dad. So she was living the high life down there. So anyhow, within maybe 2 months, I was doing acid, probably smoking pot, I'm not sure, but drinking like crazy, and lost my virginity. I don't usually share that part, but it was how quickly the influence of other people, peer pressure, because I fell into the wrong crowd. And I have to say the wrong crowd was my best friend, who is now my daughter's godmother, and she still is today. And that was 1969. And that's over 50 years ago. And she helped me start CA in New York. And I will later talk about why Cocaine Anonymous was started in New York. And it's quite a funny story, and it has to do with her. And so she was the rebel rouser. The day I met her, was in a pool hall, and she was carrying a bottle of Mateus. We called it Mateos because I'd been living in Spain, but Mateus, you know, that it probably doesn't exist anymore. It's bottled wine. And she was at the pool table with a guy at least twice her age. And she introduced me to his best friend, and he was at least twice my age. So now I'm 15, almost 16, and in the Virgin Islands, you can drink too. And we got into so much crazy trouble, but it was all fun. You know, I had to go through my goals the other day of my future, and I meditated, and the goal was to write the book with my friend Amy called, that's what we were called, the Dynamic Duo, and then To Hell and Back, you know, because I'm so grateful today. I have 40 years of sobriety and she has 37. And you'll see why she doesn't have 40 when I talk about the start of CA, the next talk. So she and I got into crazy trouble. We're best of friends. We would panhandle on the waterfront in St. Thomas. You know, we lived in gorgeous homes. You know, our parents did very well, but we panhandled because it was cool. And it also got us money to buy the booze that our parents didn't know we were drinking and everything. And so I went to, my daughter said the other day that I have to rename how I say it, an all Black people school, not an all Black school. I don't know, new politically correct. And you just have to know, if I don't get to this part of my story because I'm going on too long, I have just spent 30 years volunteering in the jungles of Costa Rica. Okay. And when I got there, there was no AA. Oh, I'll tell you that part later. Okay. But anyhow, so say it right. But anyhow, so I was in this all Black school. There were 10 whites and we're 1,600 Blacks. And I wasn't allowed in the bathrooms. And it wasn't the guys, it was the girls that were so afraid that I was going to try to steal the guys, you know, the men, the boys. Anyhow, so that was you know, I'm taking way too long with this story, so I better hurry up so I can get sober and hit the cocaine stories. So I just went downhill. I remember because the 10 whites, you know, during lunch, we had to go behind the store and sit because we couldn't hang out on what's that called? On campus. So, and one guy was fooling around. He had a gun and he put it in my mouth and I can still taste the metal. So anyhow, I mean, we were just a crazy crew. You know, it was insane. You know, I mean, I didn't have to go to biology because I couldn't stand the sight of cutting up frogs. That's very true. But, you know, and I was at the top of my class, you know, and my mother saw how easy school was for me. So she shipped me off to an all-girls boarding school, which was a prep school. It was called Newport School for Girls in Newport, Rhode Island. And it was a finishing school. Literally, they taught me how to have a cigarette lit for you. You hold the cigarette in your hand until the man lights his lighter, and then you put it in your mouth. And how to hold the drink. I was taught etiquette. And I remember going back to St. Thomas on Thanksgiving break, and I had a drink and a cigarette, and my mother, it was my mother's party, and she said to me, so what are they teaching you in school? And I said, oh, they're teaching us etiquette. Now, did I say that right? Etiquette. However, I didn't even know how to pronounce the word. So anyhow, she came there and saw I was doing extremely well in school. I had 3 roommates and we had a ball. We got high all the time, and we got high on Robitussin. And it was, we would bite off the end of licorice on both ends, like a straw, and put it in the Robitussin bottle. And we just had so much fun. And my mom got there, and I was on my way to the Casa Presidencial, the White House. And I'm on my way to the White House because I was #1 in English. And she took one look at all of us, and she put me in a prep school that's notable. And it was really hard. And I went in the middle of semester, and I had no friends. I was very lonely. My sister went there. She refused to be any part in my life. So what I did was I became very reclusive and very depressed. And it was one of the hardest times in my life. I've since had more. The first time I tried to commit suicide, I was 11. And now at this school, I wanted to commit suicide. I graduated when I was 16, so I might have been 15 at this time. And I didn't know a soul. Well, the next year, the last year of prep school, my sister had graduated, got her out of the way. And we merged schools with a boys' boarding school. And I was one of the few female students that went to the male campus. And we had a ball. My dorm only had 12 girls, and we were all partiers. And the guards didn't know at night how to handle girls on the campus. So we got away with murder. They let us go anywhere, do anything. It was the time of my life. Now, my mom got sober at that time. And at that time, I'd go home to St. Thomas for holidays, and we would say the Serenity Prayer before dinner. And then she would drink wine with dinner. And in order for me to meet up with my friend Amy to go out, we had to go to an AA meeting with her first, downtown St. Thomas, at the Moravian Church. And on the way to this church, my mom said to us, I remember in the car one night, we were rounding a really steep corner, and my mother said to us, "Did you know all alcoholics black out?" And I said, "No, that's not true. Everyone blacks out. You don't have to be an alcoholic to black out," because I really didn't believe it. So anyhow, I got to move on because I haven't even discovered cocaine yet. And I just found out this week, I thought I started doing cocaine when I was 17, and I got sober at 25. So I thought it was 8 years, a proper amount to be a cocaine addict. It wasn't weak. It wasn't like what a wimp I am. It was like that many years. And then my best friend Amy was telling her story at a CA meeting the other night. And she told me, same incident that I remember, but we were 21. Oh my God. I was like, I only did cocaine for 4 years. What a wimp. So anyhow, but I did get sober before. It was addicting. So I don't know if that's a pro or a con, but I was the only one addicted to a non-addictive drug, So that was when I was 21. My boyfriend co-owned a hotel. And actually my daughter knows the story, so I think I can tell it. I just admitted this the other day for the first time in a CA meeting that, he was twice my age. I'm 5 feet. I think he was 5'2", 5'4", something like that. Little round and roly-poly. So, but he owned a hotel in New York and was very generous with later with his cocaine. But, when I got sober, I said to him, I told you I thought I had a problem, and you told me I didn't, when I called to make my amends. And I said, well, because he said to me, I always knew you were an addict alcoholic. And I said, well, why didn't you say that when I complained to you that I thought I had a problem? And he said, because you were more fun when you were partying. And I thought, God, this is the kind of people I had in my life. But, I got to where I got, which is, and people in the program say my worst day in here is not as bad as my best day out there. Sorry, you guys. I have to say, I don't agree. I loved being out there until it didn't work anymore. But I have to be very careful that I don't have euphoric recall, because euphoric recall brings me right back out. Because when I start getting into the old days and how much fun it was, and the drug dealing and the jet setter lifestyle and all of that, I can totally forget how bad it got. And so I just have to remind myself that. And also not to, what's it called when somebody glamorize? Yeah, not to glamorize my drug using, even though I thought it was glamorous. Because what my sponsor used to tell me when I first got sober was, think it through. Think it through to the last time you got high before you pick something up, okay? And so what I had to do was make sure that I didn't have euphoric recall, because the euphoric recall got me to the point where I wanted to use again. But I had to think that through so that I didn't use again. And keeping it green was so important to me. And I'll get into that if I'm meant to later on in this story. So I'm going back to where I have so the first time we got high at 21, my girlfriend and I, Amy, she's my best friend, not my girlfriend, okay? So Amy, and I'm just gonna call her Amy from now on because she's in the story so much. So Amy and I were at the Taft Hotel, which she keeps reminding me, if anybody's seen The Graduate, that was filmed there, okay? That was a movie from way back when. It was filmed there. And so, I never told you what the short, fat, round guy was. Did I tell you? He was my sugar daddy. I probably should have just let that one go and not admit to that since I skipped it. I took my will back for a minute and then I told you. So anyhow, wipe that off the slate, okay? And getting back to where we were with him and friends of his in that hotel. And cocaine was new on the scene. And it must have been, I got sober January 16th, 1981. So it was 4 years before that. So not good. I used to be really good at multitasking, like, you know what I am, tasking. And now I can't even count backwards 4 minutes 4 years while I'm talking. But you guys can figure it out. I think it was 77, 78, whatever. So anyhow, we were getting high with these guys and they were all acting really different after we got high. And I said, I have to use the ladies' room. Amy, come with me. And we were the only two girls. And we went into the bathroom and I said, what the F? I don't feel anything. And she said, neither do I. And it's like, neither of us got high the first time we did cocaine. And I told this at a story last week, and other people admitted they didn't get high the first time either. So that was cool to know that, it wasn't just us. So we went ahead and, a normal person, I didn't get high, so I'm not going to do it anymore. Now we were scouting it out, trying to find, where we could get it next. So I started working on a cruise ship, and that's complicated and long how I got on a cruise ship, but it's very exciting because this little guy that I told you about, he now owned an airline, and I was vice president of the airline, and the airline's quite big right now. Well, not that big, but it's called Sun Country. So I'm the vice president of this airline, and we're flying to the Bahamas and all these places. So he has privileges to go on other airlines. And I had privileges growing up too. My mother married someone, so I could go on Pan Am. That was an airline back in the day, and for free. And so anyhow, now he can get me airline privileges. My mom was living in Hong Kong again, and she came and told him, she said, I want Jennifer round trip first class to visit me in Hong Kong. And I want you to open an account in her name. She was setting me up in business. But anyhow, so I go to Hong Kong with her, and she's friggin' sober at the time. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? And it was really hard. And we went to the Philippines, and I could drink, but not very often. And we were in places where and I'm probably not allowed to say this anymore, but white women had ever been. And so we had two bodyguards with guns, machine guns. It was cool. And I have a picture of me on the beach with them with my aviator sunglasses, holding one of their machine guns with a cigarette in my mouth. And to me, I thought that was really cool. I still do, actually. So anyhow, but it was really hard not being able to drink or drug with my mother. Oh my God, that was a long time. And, once in a while I could have a beer or something, but, I couldn't do a lot. And this was before, Yeah, this was, I don't remember my time well. So anyhow, I leave Hong Kong and I go straight to be with the short guy again. And one of my friends was a croupier on a cruise ship. And she later went on to become one of Tina Turner's dancers. And it was really cool. So she was on this cruise ship and she said, come join me. So I went to this cruise ship. It was in Miami, and the flight going to the cruise ship, it was Super Bowl Sunday weekend, and everyone was partying. And I was trying to get some sleep because I'm going for a job interview. Well, I get on the cruise ship, and all of a sudden I see that the land is moving, and I'm in the casino waiting for an interview, and nobody's interviewed me. I don't know. And we're on our way to the Bahamas. So Johnny came in, who is the manager of the casino. And I said, we've left port and I don't even know if you're going to hire me. He said, oh, everybody gets hired. Don't worry about that. And so I did that for a year and I loved it. I had a ball. So we could go anywhere on the cruise ship as croupiers. And one of my friends that's now in the program that I met on the ship, she and I would go. We didn't work from 4 to 7 p.m. was free time. We worked from 12 to 4, and then we worked at night. And we would go to the bars, and everybody that met us in the casino would buy us drinks. So there was a drink list of 140 drinks on that, like pink Cadillac, all that stuff. And I was just blown away that we got to go through that list. And we did before it ended. And everybody wanted to buy us drinks because they thought we would help them in the casino, which we did. And it's very easy. When I would see somebody that bought me a drink, when I was going by everyone saying hit or stay in blackjack, I would just go right by their cards because I knew what my cards were. And there was no way that I could beat them. So anyhow, it was just things. And then I learned on the roulette wheel how to spin the ball a certain way to get it to land in a certain area. So it was fun. It was a lot of interesting things. And at the crap table, because I'm only 5 feet, I couldn't reach onto the table to pull away the money that people had won or to place the bets. That's what it was, or whatever I had to do. My job required more height than my body had. So they built me this little step stool made out of the same carpet as the carpet on the floor so that I could get up there to do whatever my job was. And it was so much fun. I had a ball. It was great. So anyhow, I got to move faster because I keep going back to before the cocaine. So let me just start again on the cocaine. So on this cruise ship, that's why I was talking about the cruise ship. On this cruise ship, I'm 21, so I had tried cocaine and it hadn't worked. I had an old boyfriend. So it was like in every port of call, I had an old boyfriend. And so this old boyfriend in St. Thomas, I went to visit him at his house. And back then we just did lines. So the crack hadn't, what's it called? Freebase hadn't been developed yet. And it was just cocaine. And oh my God, I became a new woman. I was blown away by the euphoria. And the Virgin Islands was gorgeous. And I looked out at these gorgeous, hills and the blue, clear water. And it was all crystal clear. And my mind was crystal clear. And the new woman, the only problem was with the new woman, anyhow, I say it wrong. Anyhow, the first thing the new woman wanted was another hit of cocaine. And, I became addicted then and there. But I couldn't do it all the time because I didn't have the money. And so it was just on social occasions when it was given to me. And I learned at a very young age in addiction. Okay, I'll tell you that part. So I'm now off the cruise ship, and we had been with the boys, Amy and I, the boys meaning the drug dealers, in New York, and doing a lot of illegal things with them that were really fun. Okay, and now I'm in San Francisco, and I think I followed some of the boys there. I can't remember why I moved there. But anyhow, I met a drug dealer who always had cocaine. And I moved in with him the day I met him. Okay. Never dawned on me that he might not be addicted. You know, I guess there's some people that don't get addicted. And we went out to lunch. And Amy and I pass this restaurant all the time now. And in this restaurant, he ordered milk with lunch. And I almost died. I said, what have I gotten myself into? But luckily, he was able to do a lot of cocaine. You know, that worked its way in our progression. And that was great. And I started a little company and I was happy. And, you know, we were getting married and everything. And I know. One of the things is San Francisco is close to Stanford University in the United States. And Stanford University, I know my time's getting up, but I will be telling my cocaine recovery story tomorrow or whenever I talk again, because that's when I started Cocaine Anonymous in New York. So I'm going to save the history of CA for tomorrow. So I still have a few more minutes to talk about this. So unbelievably, okay, so Stanford is a town and then Palo Alto is next to it. So I have to remember that later on. And what happened was we were dealing drugs to the football team. And the name of the football star, who's very famous, not Evan Luck, the guy before him, that was very famous, was the only guy on the football team that didn't do cocaine. So we would go to the football games and have the cocaine and, you know, and be dealing, you know. And so I have to say that, you know, my daughter was born when I was 8 years sober. I figured that it would be best to have my daughter over 7 years past, because I don't know if anybody else has heard this. Nobody seems to identify, but I had heard that your cells all change out of your body every 7 years. So I said, if I wait till 8 years, till I get pregnant, I'll have none of those addiction cells. Well, my daughter's 32 today, and the verdict's still out. She doesn't drink now because she doesn't like the way she feels the next day. So she stopped on January 1st this year, but she's not in the program, you know, and who am I to say? I don't know if she has a problem. She doesn't do it anymore, you know, so I have no idea. But all I can say, you know, my husband was a cocaine addict, and I met him at the first Cocaine Anonymous meeting in Connecticut. I won't get into that, but I went, one of my best friends who later was later on the board of trustees, but not the first one. I was on the first board of trustees, but he and I would fly to California together. But anyhow, he was starting cocaine in Connecticut. And I went to the first meeting, and I will tell you, it was a guy that owned a shoe store that was named after, a shoe company that was named after cocaine. And I had been his counselor in treatment for cocaine addiction because I was one of the only ones that that was addicted to a non-addicted drug. So I was a cocaine addiction counselor, and he had been a client of mine. And I said, my friends and I are going to the first CA meeting in Connecticut. You want to come? And so he came with his limo. So we drive up in this limo, and the man chairing the meeting, I ended up marrying. So it was very cool. You know, that's where we met. So it's a cocaine story. And I'm going back to my cocaine addiction and where I went with. Okay, so I went in with this guy, and he was not the ideal guy, but I stayed with him until the end of my addiction, right towards the end. And so there I am living with him. And I remember we got into a fight once, and I'd been raised, you don't get angry. So I didn't know how to be angry. Literally, it was stuffed so far down that I couldn't be angry. And I'm in this fight with him, and I said, this is what someone would say. And I said it. And then this is what, and then he pushed me. And I'm like, what the heck? You know, so anyhow, he kicked me out of the house. So I took a drug overdose, not to leave. That I was that paranoid to go out into the world. I don't know if anybody else got paranoid. I got paranoid. I remember when we were dealing drugs in New York, it was so funny because we would have in a loft on the top floor, like fifth floor of a building, you know, with the fire escapes not there, it would be on a different place, and putting up sheets to cover the windows so that they couldn't see us, you know. And then we couldn't use that. Back then there were phones in apartments and stuff, and we couldn't use that phone at all because that could be them. And, you know, I mean, we were dealing drugs and cocaine, so we had to be careful. But I remember calling from a payphone to another payphone and not saying our real names so they couldn't catch us. How the heck would anyone know to track two payphones together? You know, I mean, we were just like over the top paranoid, but I never went to jail. And maybe that's why. I mean, I did go to jail once when I lived in Key West. Okay. And when I lived in Key West, I had never been to jail. And I was sitting with the district attorney of Key West or whatever, you know, that guy up there, and a bar, just 6 bar stools. And it was called the chart room. And I told him my sad story that I'd never been to jail. And he said, "You haven't?" I said, "No, and all my friends have been." And, you know, I'm a goody two shoes, so maybe that's why I stayed out of it. So he said, "You want to go?" I said, "Yes." And it was like midnight, and he took me to the jail. And I went in, and they clanked the thing shut. You know, you hear that in movies. And I got that. And then a cockroach crawled over it. And I went, "Oh, my God." And the bottom bunk was a woman that was not nice. She said, "Get up there." And I go up to the top bunk, and I'm like, this is not what I thought it would be. I thought this would be more fun. And I looked at the camera in the room and I said, "I've had enough." And they came and got me out. So that was my jail experience. So anyhow, I also, when I would travel with cocaine in the United States, if I had a sealed envelope that was with stamps on it, addressed, and it hadn't been sent, that the US federals could not open it. So I would put ounces of cocaine in it and then carry it with me so that they couldn't. And I don't know if anybody's heard of EST. Anyhow, I had been in EST and couldn't follow their rules. And his name was Warren Earhart, that's right. And I couldn't follow the rules, and in front of 2,000 people, because I said, "I've had enough of this one night." And at 8 o'clock, I went out to the bar. You couldn't drink or do anything during EST. So I went out to a bar, but little did I know, it was the first night, they collected the badges at the end of the night. And if you weren't there, they knew that you hadn't stayed. So the next day, in front of 2,000 people, they called me up on stage and, you know, belittled me and told me that, you know, I can't even keep a commitment and all of this, and kicked me out. So that was pretty. So anyhow, I had it out for Warner Earhart. So that's who this envelope was addressed to. So anyhow, I keep forgetting where I am. And so Warner Earhart was how I did that, you know, and carried the drugs. And I guess tomorrow I'm going to have to tell more about this because, well, I'll just tell this part. So Amy and I were flying to New York from San Francisco with the drugs, with the cocaine. And she somehow, it was a red eye, and she somehow started telling people that I was carrying coke if they wanted to buy some. I didn't have a scale. All I had were the little bags to do the grams. And, you know, and all of a sudden, she's got me in the bathroom selling grams, you know, and there's a line out the door of people waiting to come in. And I was a very generous person, extremely. So I was giving everybody too much. You know, I never would have made it as a dealer ever or owned a bar. Forget it. You know, when I was out there, I was way too generous. So we got to New York, and I did not know. We didn't know where we were staying, and I was a member of the Admirals Club, or the Pan Am Club back then. Who knows? I was a member of one of those clubs, and you go in these clubs, and we sat in there, you know, and you get free drinks, and it was morning, and we were in there trying to figure out what we were going to do in New York and where we were going to go to sell the drugs. And we knew a bar manager of 1 Fifth Avenue. It was a bar on Fifth Avenue. So we called him, and he said, yeah, come on over. So we go to his house, and we're high. We've got the drugs, and I had to do laundry for some reason. And I'm downstairs in his laundry room. There's a guy in there doing his laundry. And all of a sudden, I had no clue. I thought I was in San Francisco. I didn't know I was in New York. And I said, man, isn't it a bitch climbing this hill to get to the laundromat? And he's looking at me like I'm crazy. And I go back upstairs and realize I'm in New York. And I'm like, oh my God. And I go into this guy's apartment. And the three of us are sitting there. And I'm hearing all these voices. And I'm hearing everybody talking about, you know, we're at a party. And I'm like, where is everyone? And they said, what are you talking about? Well, later when I got sober and I became a cocaine addiction counselor, I learned that that's from lack of sleep, not from cocaine addiction or cocaine use and overuse. That comes from lack of sleep, the hearing of the voices and all of that. So that was good to know that, you know, anyhow, one less thing that I could blame on cocaine. So I'm going to try to get to the very end. Okay, so now so first of all, I was also invincible and paranoid, better than, less than. And I felt that I was somebody. I was 25 years old and I wasn't anyone. And I really felt that I was someone. And I'm in an after hours club in New York. And I was with the boys. And okay, it's been 7 years, so I can say it. So the mafia was on my other side of the bar. And this little guy kept trying to get me to leave the boys. And I'm not leaving my cocaine. I know where I am and where I'm staying. And so what I do is I just keep ignoring him. And he slipped me a Mickey, the first time I've ever been slipped a Mickey. And the next thing I know, I came to on the couch upstairs in the after hours club of the nursery. There was a guy next to me passed out. And I went up to the bar and ordered a drink. And the bartender said, I've been told I can't serve you. And I said, don't you know who I am? And it was like, I really thought I was someone hot. I thought I was the coolest and she wouldn't serve me. So I ended up in a detox through my mother. My mother got me into treatment and she died when she was 47 years sober. And I'm going to have to wrap this up. So I'm not going to get to talk about much of my recovery. So I go into this detox and because I was exhausted. My mother told me to get in the cab because I had no purse, no money, nothing. She said, get into a cab and I will meet you. And she met me and took me to Roosevelt Hospital where there was a detox. And she said, tell them you're chemically dependent. And I said, okay, got that. Chemically dependent. And I go into the TV room where everybody is in the detox. And this guy says, what are you here for? I said, I'm chemically dependent. And he said, on what? I said, cocaine. He said, join me. We're here for 14 days. Alcoholics are only here for 5. And I was like, what? Because they didn't know how to treat cocaine addicts at the time because it wasn't addictive. So anyhow, I ran out to the front desk and I said, I made a mistake. I'm an alcoholic. I'm not addicted to cocaine. And I got out of there in 5 days, thank God. But I haven't had a drink since, or a drug, obviously. Amazing. And yes, so I am going to just say thank you so much for listening to me. And sorry, so much came out.
No, hey, it's fine. And I really hope you can come back and continue. I feel that's a very appropriate and godsend place to stop today's podcast, because you've now got yourself into treatment, and there you are after all that madness and active addiction, all that chaos and using drama. Jennifer, there you are now engaging with help for the first time. So I think that's a perfect place to stop part one at, and we'll liaise over the next few days, and hopefully get a part two to your personal story up on the channel for our listeners to be able to see. So just a quick few pointers from me, and then we'll have a quick chat. And firstly, thank you so much. That was just so thorough. And the things we get up to when we're using her, you know, the places we end up in. I'm picturing you. I'll probably have that visual in my mind all night, with Jennifer on a beach with a machine gun and a cigarette hanging out of your mouth. You know, it's like Fidel Castro's woman, you know. And you know, the things we get up to, you know, it's just no wonder it's called being in the madness, you know. And as you say, going to the bar, don't you know who I am? I relate with all this, you know. And of course, it's such a mood altering substance, isn't it, cocaine, you know. But I just want to say for our listeners, firstly, thank you so much for tuning in today. Do check out the other podcasts. There's lots on this channel. Do come along to a Cocaine Anonymous meeting. There are lots of face-to-face meetings available, and there are lots of Zoom meetings. If you was to go back earlier in this podcast, I did put up on the screen a list of some of the Cocaine Anonymous meetings. But if you go to ca.org, which is the website that I'm actually on there when you're looking at these pamphlets on the screen, or go to ca-online.org, or go to cocaineanonymous.org.uk. That's one word, cocaineanonymous.org.uk. You'll get lists of online and face-to-face meetings. So never be afraid to go to a Zoom meeting. You don't need to put your camera on. In fact, only about a quarter of participants at Zoom 12-step meetings even put their camera on, nor feel you'll be forced to speak. Speaking is entirely voluntary. So if you're struggling with drug addiction, come along to a meeting, find out what it's all about, and hear other wonderful stories where we share our experience of strength and hope. So, you know, we've got a couple of minutes before we wrap things up for today. I'm just so pleased you came along, and you know, it sounds like after all that, you know, you make it to treatment, and we're going to save all that for the next podcast. But Jennifer, I mean, you know, it's often been said that there's such thing as a using career, that we just get sick and tired of being sick and tired. I don't know if that was your experience, but it was certainly mine, and unfortunately, I had to have that experience again and again and again. You know, I mean, it's just a wonderful process, though, and I call it the mysteries of recovery, the motivation for change. What is it that happens in the life of a drug addict that gives them that impetus to change? I mean, I've been counselling someone today, Jennifer, who cannot seem to quit, and I've been counselling them, talking with them for months and months and months and months, and they're still using the same amount of Class A and alcohol every day. But they would, don't get me wrong, they're sober when I talk with them, but they can't stop using, you know. And not to get too specific, but the point I'm trying to make is, you know, it's sometimes the mysteries why how we, you know, we decide to quit and get clean, and very often it's almost like a conspiracy of circumstances and feelings. We sometimes might be under marital or relationship pressure, or criminal. You mentioned, you know, getting in trouble, criminal consequences. We start dealing, right? That was part of my story. You know, perhaps our mind starts to go, perhaps our bodies start to go, perhaps we become unemployable, and all these different things, and how we feel. The fancy modern term is cognitive dissonance, but we know it as powerlessness. Part of us wants to quit, part of us doesn't want to quit. So, I mean, you know, in terms of powerlessness, had you thought about your own personal powerlessness before you arrived at treatment?
For me, no, because I was taken away from the drug and alcohol before I was ready to quit. But being in treatment took it all out of me. And I had a fear of what I would feel like in sobriety. I had no idea what my mind would be like. And I couldn't believe it. When I was in detox, I woke up one day, one of my last days, and it felt like Christmas morning. I was like, this is what I've been running from all my life, is a feeling of being normal. And it was just such an eye-opener. And like you were talking about with your friend, I do this with sponsees sometimes, is I will say, keep it green, but they don't get it enough until I say, tell me about your last using. And then they feel how bad it is, and just, you could even tape it. Just listen to that or write it down before you pick up the next time, to keep it green so that we don't get caught up in that, the drugs that take over.
Yeah, that's a really, really good idea. I'll take note of that. And our perspectives change. It's the miracle of recovery, isn't it? We get clean, and then I'm convinced personally, Jennifer, that what I really need is vital spiritual experiences every day. That's the reality. I use drugs every day, right? Which arguably was a spiritual experience. I need to have a psychic change, a personality change, vital spiritual experiences each and every day. And this, you kindly coming along today has been a huge part of, and I've been very much looking forward to coming along. Let me put that on record. And, and that ultimately is what recovery is. So what I try and do, Jennifer, is every day I have things in place that I know will give me that spiritual experience.
Yes, absolutely.
So that we've pretty much come to the end of today's broadcast. But I just want to, is there anything in closing? And I know you'll be back hopefully in a couple of days. We can liaise later on and work out an mutually agreeable time to do that. But is there anything in closing for the last minute or two you'd like to share with our listeners?
The one thing I want to share is the spiritual experience, because right before we started this meeting, you and I said the Serenity Prayer together. And it came to me how I was going to divide this into two parts. I had no idea. And when I know that it's spiritual, is that like when I finished talking, I had no idea what I said. And then I know I'm carrying a message. It's not ego, because I turned it over, and I do have to almost do a disclaimer saying that wasn't me talking, you guys. You know what I mean? It was just that, that was what came to me. So that I have to just know that my life is spiritual, and I'm grateful for that. What a life.
Absolutely. And what a deal recovery is, the transformation, the freedom we experience. It's just such a blessing.
Yes.
Now, what I'm going to say is thank you everyone for listening today. And please like and subscribe. Keep an eye on the channel. We'll hopefully get the part 2 to this story available on YouTube and in the rooms and WhatsApp and the Skype CA pages very shortly. So look, thank you so much for coming along today. It's been a real blessing.
Thank you. It has been a real blessing to me. Thank you for that.
Okay, Jennifer. So please tune in for Jennifer from New York's part 2 of her Experience, Strength and Hope in a few days. And until next time, family, stay safe out there. Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.